Hello there and welcome. Today I shall be doing my November wrap-up. These are two patterns. They probably shouldn't be going together, but we're just gonna roll with it. I have to count how many books I read because I don't even know. In the month of November, I read 9 books, which is pretty stellar considering only one of them was a graphic novel. I don't know how I did all the things I did. I read 9 books. Most of them were regular novels. I had company twice. I had a wedding. I don't know how I did all the things I did, but basically this is the result. Is I look like a lumberjack. I want to die and just screaming a lot on the inside. I did really good in terms of nonfiction November. I didn't stick a lot to my regular TBR. I ended up reading 5 nonfiction books, and you'll see in this video which books I read from my original TBR, because honestly I couldn't even tell you what those original books were. Some of them you will have already known because they went into the last episode of books I couldn't get into, which I'll link up above. I also have a giant cup of tea. This tea, highly recommend, non-spot. Sometimes I'm too funny. It's this like citrus one from Celeste Seasonings, and it tastes like orange juice tea. Never would think that would be something that appeals to me, but it's so good. First book, we're just gonna do this in the order that I read them because that's the easiest. And the first book that I read this month, such a light read, was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I can never say his name right. Wow, 5 out of 5 stars. This was a fascinating read. Definitely a book I can see myself rereading in the future. It says a lot about mental health and the current jail system and capital punishment and all that stuff. You really get a good look at that in this book. I never thought I would feel so many feelings for people who had murdered somebody in cold blood. Not just somebody, but an entire family. I didn't know I would have so many mixed emotions, but then again, we're dealing with human beings and real life things. The bottom line of my thoughts of this book was just like, people are complicated. Dealing with things and dealing with what happened in like such black and white terms is so very complicated because there was so much more that went into it, and it was just intense and sad and heart-wrenching. I never thought I would feel like I did with this book, where I knew from the beginning what was going to happen. I knew who did it from the very beginning, but I still was so invested. I think I devoured this book in like a couple days. It was so good. I just thought it was very easy to read and just very powerful. Next book that I read, which probably the best book I read this month, definitely going into top books I read this year, a book that I have not stopped thinking about since I read it. I can't believe I just read it this month because I feel like I read this book years ago. That's how much I've been thinking about it. And that is Bad Blood by John Carreyrou. This book blew my freaking mind. If you don't know what it's about Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. It was supposed to be this revolutionary way to take blood, and it was supposed to like revolutionize the healthcare system. Boy, oh boy, was it something. Another very easy nonfiction book. I always thought nonfiction would always be very hard to read, and this was just so entertaining. My big thing that I took away from it is like, people can start off with good intentions and very easily turn into a con man and very easily hurt other people in the process of thinking that they're still pursuing a good goal or a good thing or doing things to help people. I also did watch the documentary called The Inventor. If you watch that, you haven't read Bad Blood. Let's say that. If you watch that and you haven't read Bad Blood, I still recommend you read Bad Blood. There's so much more in the book than there is in the documentary. The documentary is very entertaining, but if you really want a lot of the information behind it, really want to know more of the dynamics within the company, I highly recommend reading Bad Blood. I think it goes it just has to. I mean, it was only a 2-hour documentary. It wasn't going to go into everything. If you want a crazy, wild time, highly recommend. The next book, finally some lightheartedness that I finally read, was Strangers Assume My Girlfriend Is My Nurse by Shane Burkaw. 5 out of 5 stars. Chef's kiss. Absolutely love this. I've been watching Shane and Hannah's YouTube videos for a while now. Absolutely love them. I had read his first book a few months ago. I didn't care for it. I thought I didn't like the way that he dealt with people with different types of disabilities from him, specifically like developmental like type of disabilities. I wasn't crazy about it. I didn't think he made fun of people, and it wasn't funny, and I didn't appreciate it. But that was also a long time ago. I think that book came out in like 2013, something like that, like years ago. This book was definitely much more aware, much more diverse in like him talking about other people with other disabilities. Like he definitely has fixed a lot of his viewpoints on things, and he just overall more advocates for people with varying types of disabilities and like the disability like community. I just feel like he's much more aware. But this was so good, so funny. His humor is hilarious. If you want a good, sometimes in like, you know, heart-wrenching but mostly lighthearted memoir, I highly recommend this. I love Shane, love Hannah. If you want just some like good, funny, light-hearted videos, I recommend their YouTube channel, Squirmy and Grubs. I just read a lot of hard books this month, which is funny because it was like the hardest month of my life. The next book that I read was Hunger by Roxane Gay, and wow, feels. I knew going into this that this was going to be a lot of feels. This is, if you have not heard about it, Roxane Gay's personal memoir about her body. And wow. Trigger warnings for just a lot of talk about food and weight, and talk around fat bodies and fat phobia, and definitely trigger warnings for like eating disorders and sexual assault and rape. I loved this. I loved her comments on the body positivity movement, and her own personal feelings, and basically talks a lot about how she came to be in the body that she's in, and how she wants to better her body because it doesn't work the way she wants it to. And I thought that was a really good discussion that she kind of talked about in this, and I just loved a lot of her thoughts, and I loved her writing style. Topic aside, that's what like pushed this book over and beyond for me, was the writing style in this book. It was so eloquent but yet easy, and it felt like she was talking to me. It felt like she was just sitting there talking to me, and I absolutely loved it. So talk about me a little bit. I've always been fat, always have been, probably always will be, who knows. I always have been. So there are some things that she'd mentioned that I heavily relate to in this book. But on the other hand, there are things that I don't relate to because her body is different than mine, and a lot of things even I was made aware of. So I think it's just a very eye-opening read. And reading some like the negative reviews, some people were like, oh, she was just complaining because the world wouldn't accommodate her. I read it as her saying like, this world just isn't made to accommodate my body. That's all I felt like she was saying. And basically how hard it is for her to do so many things. It was good. It was eye-opening even for me, and I highly, highly recommend. The next book is Mighty Jack and Xena the Space Girl by Ben Hatke. This was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I only gave it 3 stars. And you're like, oh, but that's still a decent reading. This wasn't bad. I just feel like there was no oomph. There wasn't the fun, fast-paced feeling that I got with Xena the Space Girl and Mighty Jack separately. I feel like, yes, all together, the 2 stories worked very well, but I feel like there were points where like the author was trying to explain too much of what had happened in the other books, and then like I feel like At other times, it wasn't the type of thing that stood alone. So it was just like kind of weird. I felt like there was so much buildup to get to the action and to get to what was happening and to get to the point of like the climax of the story and like, you know, all of that. And it just never got there. And then it just kind of ended. And that was that. So I did like the ending. I thought it was a very good ending. I thought it was the best ending, honestly. I have no complaints about that, but I just feel like I was waiting for like the ball to drop, and it just kind of slowly fell to the ground. The next book that I read was Into the Wild by John Krakauer. This was a book I just bought this month. I was out and I saw it for $3, and it was like this nice hardcover with this bookmark in it, and I was like, why not? It's Nonfiction November, I'll read it this month. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. This was a very interesting read. It tells you on the front what it's about. It's about this man called Chris Johnson McCandless, and he donates the rest of his $25,000 that he had from like his scholarship for college to charity, and then he just disappears for a couple years, and then he goes into the wild, into the wilderness of Alaska, and he died. It was very interesting. Don't recommend if you like things to have endings, because this doesn't. You don't know a lot of what happens. Sometimes those stories are good. Sometimes to know like this happened and we don't know all of what happened. So that's kind of why I liked it. I liked the author's own opinion on it and bringing in his own personal experience to kind of bring forth his opinion on why he thinks Chris did what he did. I thought that was cool. If you want to read about a rich, privileged man doing a very stupid thing and getting himself killed in the process, highly recommend. The next book that I read was the most shocking book that I enjoyed, which was The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. This was a book that was on my physical TBR. I bought it because I've read My Brilliant Friend by her, and I planned to read the rest of that series, and I saw this local used bookstore for cheap, so I had bought it. And wow, I love this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was phenomenal. For even just being 140 pages, it still packed the punch of like her other novels, or I've only read one, so her other novel that I read. Elena just manages to write books about people that I think are terrible, that I think do awful things to other people, yet I still read and I still find fascinating. Don't know how they do it, but it's impressive. Something about Ferrante's work is like so different from anything else I've read, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much, is I've never read anything else like her work. Her writing style and how she writes characters and how she unfolds her stories and her characters' motives and morals is so original and just stunning. Ending had me shook. And the second to last book that I read in the month of November was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. Yes, I cried. It's this short little novella. I cried. What else is new? I cried at every one of his books. Wow, 5 out of 5 stars. For being so short, I was worried that it like wouldn't hit me or I wouldn't feel as much, but I was still emo through the whole thing. It's all about this grandfather and his family members learning how to say goodbye, and it's a tough one. I don't quite know how to review nonfiction yet. I'm trying to get better. This is the most I've ever read, ever. And the last book that I read was Last Pick by Jason Walls. 5 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed this. Didn't expect to enjoy it. This is a YA alien invasion story. It features these 2 twin siblings. Wyatt is on the autism spectrum. Cannot speak to the rep in it. I looked up reviews. I couldn't see anything negative, but the rep is there. If you want to give me your thoughts on it, you can. But I'm not going to talk about the rep. I just thought this was overall really good. I like the relationship between the 2 siblings in it. I was a little shook at the end. I was like, ooh. I wasn't expecting that to happen. It was the kind of graphic novel where I couldn't really see where it was going, which I liked. A lot of times with graphic novels, I'm like, okay, I can see where we're going. But this one, I was truly like blind. I was like, where are we gonna go with this? So I'm very excited to pick up the second one. I already put it on hold in my library, so I'm probably gonna be sneaking that in December. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of Ben Hackey in a lot of ways. Artwork isn't my favorite. It was okay, but it did keep me very entertained, and there were parts where I kind of forgot I was reading, which is always a good thing. That's it. That's all I read in November. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these books down below. Let me know if you participated in Nonfiction November. I would love to know. How'd you do? How was your reading in November period? Let me know. What was your favorite book that you read in November? Go ahead, tell me. I'd love to know. If you want to, you can go ahead and subscribe. I try to post every single week, and my social media links will also be down below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope I shall see you in the next one. Bye.